My name is Dr. Shmuel Shields. I'm a practicing nutritionist in the community in Queens for approximately 30 years now. We're doing a health series. This particular series is on children's health, trying to make us more aware of some of the health problems that children have and ways that we may be able to address them, and trying to maybe even show what might be the underlying cause of some of these problems. So what I want to talk about in this particular session is really the diet, the foods that children eat nowadays. Dramatically different than previous generations. So I want to start with things we that are very dominant in children's diets today, and I think some of these things are really the underlying cause for some of the health problems we see. Because if a child doesn't have a good diet, he's not eating well, his immune system is compromised, his health is compromised, even his ability to perform in school is going to be somewhat compromised, and sometimes even behavior is affected by our diet in some children. So I want you, again, this is just to make us more aware, and we will continue the series and we'll try to give you ways to correct and improve in this area. So the first thing I want to talk about are drinks. Water should be the beverage of choice, but often it's not. Soda and soft drinks have become pretty much the beverage of choice. And then, of course, we have a tremendous intake of sugar in children. The intake is astronomical. And the truth of the matter is, this applies to many adults as well, because this is really a family children's series, how to promote better health in the family and for children as well. So adults, some of this information is very relevant to adults as well. A lot of us are unaware of the amount of sugar in the typical American diet because we don't realize the amounts of sugar that manufacturers add to many of the foods that we eat. One of the problems with the foods that children eat nowadays is that they're highly processed. I would say 90% of foods consumed by children and even adults are probably 90% of the foods are processed, where at the turn of the century only about 10% of our food supply was processed. So we are eating highly processed foods that have been refined, foods that have been manipulated and changed, many of the important ingredients removed, and that sets us up. It sets us up, unfortunately, for health consequences. So, for example, sweets, candy, cookie, cakes, pastries. Oftentimes kids are rewarded with these foods. They're available, they're around, they're at home, they're in school. So they have a large intake of these types of foods, which are loaded with sugar and other ingredients that are not healthy. In addition to that, sugar is in most of the store-bought foods that we buy, whether it's a container of yogurt or ketchup or a can of beans or soups or whatever. Almost any packaged item that you purchase will contain a source of sugar. I'll just give you an example so you'll get a feel for how much sugar we are consuming, and particularly how much sugar children are consuming. If we go back to the 1600s, when the Pilgrims first came to this country, the average person was consuming about 7 pounds of sugar annually. That's enough to bake about 25 apple pies. If we fast forward the camera, the average person today is consuming somewhere between 125 and 150 pounds of sugar annually. What that means is, if you had an 8-ounce glass in front of you, an empty 8-ounce glass, and you filled it more than halfway with sugar, more than halfway, you would have to consume that amount of sugar pretty much every day to reach those kind of figures. And believe it or not, we're somehow accomplishing that goal. Why? Many people I see in my practice will tell me, we don't use sugar. What they mean is they don't add it from the sugar bowl into their coffee or tea or onto their foods. But They don't realize that if they buy a container of fruit flavored yogurt and I tell them to look at the label and they'll see the word sugar and they'll see the word 28 grams or 30 or more than 30 grams, let's use a number like 28. I tell them that every 4 grams of sugar on the label equals a teaspoon of sugar. So you can see after finishing one container of yogurt, you can get 6 or 7 teaspoons of sugar just from a container of yogurt. And when it comes to drinking juices or other sweetened beverages, uh, you could look at your juice containers, even though it says in the container no added sugar. If you look at the nutrition facts label, you'll see that there could be 30 or more grams of sugar there, so that's another 6 or 7 teaspoons of sugar. You could see over the course of the day how this can add up um, and be very harmful because this refined sugar spikes your blood sugar, and whatever is not being used for energy at that time is being converted into fat in the body. So it's a source of weight gain, it's a source of cavities and many, many other health problems, including elevated cholesterol levels, um, triglyceride levels will go up with a high refined sugar and refined carbohydrate intake. And that brings us to the next category, which would be refined carbohydrates, things made from white flour, white bread, white rice, white pasta, and of course all the white flour that's used in pastries, cookies, cakes, and so on. Um, White flour, once it's been refined and becomes white flour, it also breaks down to sugar very, very rapidly in the body, gives you the spike, and puts us at risk for weight gain and numerous other health problems. But unfortunately, these are the staple kind of foods and beverages that children are getting every day. It's not like a treat once in a while. It's a daily occurrence, and that's what's very concerning. Uh, then, of course, we have artificial sweeteners, which are no panacea. They have their own host of problems. We have alcohol sugars, which at one time we thought were a little bit better, but now things like erythritol, mannitol, sorbitol, in certain amounts seem to be problematic, according to some recent research. So we have to be careful with these types of things. I want to move on to a next category, which again, children and adults consume, sometimes unknowingly, but hydrogenated fats and oils. Now, if you had 10 experts in the room, 10 scientists, 10 nutritional experts, um, usually you'll get 11 different opinions. But when it comes to hydrogenated fats and oils, it's going to be unanimous decision that they are very dangerous fats. They're harmful fats. They increase inflammation in the body. They damage blood vessels, and they raise cholesterol levels. So where do we find these hydrogenated oils and fats? In many of the foods that are consumed by children and adults. Things like commercial peanut butters, almost all your commercial baked goods, cookies, cakes, pastries, things of that type. Well, if you look on the label, look at the ingredient list, you'll see the word hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated. Many of the commercial margarines are still, maybe 80% of them are still made from hydrogenated oils. So I encourage you to read labels, and these are the kind of things you want to keep out of the diet. Um, in addition to hydrogenated fats, kids are often consuming, by the way, the word shortening is another term for hydrogenated fat or an oil. And then we have deep fried foods. Fried foods are the go-to. Kids love them. French fries, other, fried chicken, chicken nuggets. It's all fried. These are all fried foods with unhealthy fats, saturated fats, which impact cholesterol. Um, Processed luncheon meats, deli meats, again, high in fat, high in sodium, nitrates, nitrites, artificial colors, flavors. They're trying to get the some of the red dyed colors off the market. But they're still out there, and kids use them. They get sprinkled on ice cream and so on and so forth. Um, Salty, chips and empty calorie snacking, and this kind of thing, and so on. Okay, so I think it's clear to see that this type of eating on a regular basis, where these kind of foods are being consumed daily and in fairly large amounts, have real health risks. And I don't think it's a surprise that we're seeing the consequences at such young ages in children. Obesity, problems with the teeth, cholesterol, blood sugar problems. What saddens me is that there's a big preventive piece here, and if we became more proactive, we could prevent a lot of these childhood illnesses that we're seeing. And we're going to continue with the next topic. Next topic will be on transitioning to a better diet and developing better eating habits.